Hello everyone, welcome to Click Moments, where the right information at the right time is a portal from where you are to where you want to be. And I'm your host, Beth Orr, and today we have amazing guests. We have Micah and Pia, and we are generously in their backyard in West Asheville. So excited to have you guys here. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
And so today, instead of me introducing them, they are going to introduce a little bit about each other so that you can understand more about them from each other's lens. So,
Okay.
Pia, would you like to start with Micah?
I will start. This is Micah McKenzie, an amazing photographer in Asheville and also an influencer of other people with his incredible personality and support of the community on so many levels, and an incredible artist. So
Great.
And this is Pia. She is a therapist. She is also one of the best nurturers that I know on this planet. She knows how to form a beautiful family, aka mafia. It's what you need, folks. It's what you need. And she's just an all-around great human being.
oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be talking about a topic that, quite honestly, other than the two of them, I have not heard outside of you anybody even talking about this topic, which is why I'm really excited to talk more about it, because I feel like the two of you have a deeper understanding of this that could be really helpful to our viewers. So we're going to be talking about today gender fluidity. And so, Pia, would you mind kind of getting us started with some orientation to what that topic and term even means, if you were to introduce it to people?
Okay, so I'll try to explain my concept of that. So in doing my work with couples over the years, and many amazing people who have come into my practice or just been in my personal life, this idea that the way we see ourselves in the world, with the traits that we have, the things that bring us joy, the things that attract us, is so varied. And a lot of times in our culture, I think it's viewed as masculine or feminine. Well, what are masculine traits? What are feminine traits? But in some ways, we have all of these inside of us.
Right.
And I think that the level to that we lean this way or the other, a lot of times, right, we have these boxes, and getting out of the boxes, I don't even like the terms, actually. I don't even like the term male, female, in some sense, the masculine, the feminine, because why is it a masculine trait to chop wood and feminine to be a nurturer or cook? I mean, we're so
Conditioned.
yes, we're so conditioned, and we have so many things inside of us that we can express. And yes, sure, it comes out in clothing, it comes out in things that we like and love, but why does it have to be put in those terms, feminine and masculine? And I don't know, I think it goes beyond language.
Right. So is this then a concept that you introduced in the relationship because of how you see it professionally in your counseling practice?
Yes.
Okay.
So in interacting with Micah, Micah is very nurturing, right? So he said this about me, but he is really a nurturer. And so he's so good at giving compassion and hugs. He has the best hugs. And
You do give the best hugs.
You
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
And also this idea of wanting to run a business. We both want to do that. And so there was one day I looked at Micah and I said, you know, in terms of this, I kind of feel like I'm equally masculine and feminine. If I was to go with our culture's definition of those traits. And so then that's how we started talking about it. And you can explain for yourself.
Right. For me, it's always been, I've always felt this nurturing aspect of myself. I don't know if it was lack of being giving, said nurturing. I definitely wanted to always allow people to know that they were loved and cared for constantly. So the nurturer was just a natural thing for me to do. So, and yeah, when we first started seeing each other, we didn't per se know what it was, but we've recognized immediately there was an equal balance of both the nurturing and the, I guess, secure. That's what I want to call it. But I still don't know if I want to use that word. We're still figuring it out. Yeah. But we just noticed that in each other, and it was definitely something we were just like, hey, I've never had this conversation with anybody before, and it really allowed us to solidify into just that mindset of this is okay to talk about, and let's really talk about it and get it out there.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Pia, how do you think, because you didn't grow up in the United States, how do you think the culture that you did grow up in influenced this concept, or did it?
So I think, I mean, again, Danish culture, growing up in Denmark, I think that Denmark is post-Christian. So some of the stereotypical gender roles are a little bit different. I think it's more accepted that it's sort of like a given, both men and women will work outside the home, and you get a year's maternity leave, and it can be shared equally between the man and the woman, so that the woman will not be off the outside of the workforce, so that they have equal employment opportunity. That women typically, if they stay home with their kids, when they get back out in the workforce, they're sort of behind. And I think Denmark has, I grew up with, both parties just work, and both people just do the family, and both people just pitch in where you need to pitch in. And then as I got older, I saw a lot of the talks about women and men sharing equal responsibilities inside the home and outside of the home. And I think a lot of people are adapting that too in the States. But in Asheville in particular, I think it spiked my senses being here, because there's a lot of talk about the divine feminine, the divine masculine, you know?
I don't even know that I've heard those terms until I came to Asheville, right? I'm still I'm still trying to understand the scope of this topic. But you're right, like on the way here, I was thinking about how that actually informs this entire topic of gender fluidity, right?
And then I would hear in my practice, people would come in and, you know, sort of be, well, if I'm in my divine feminine, then he can be in his divine masculine. And I'm like, wait a second, what does that mean? What does that even mean? And so again, it was like being the receiver versus the giver, and women are nurturers and soft, and I'm like, no, women for thousands of years have been hard workers, you know, chopping wood, getting all this, getting shit done. And so have men. And why can't we come to the table in relationships and say, these are the things I'm good at, these are the things you're great at, let's put it together and make things work, and let's make changes, and let's accomplish what we want to accomplish.
I'm going to interrupt. You being from that culture, correct? That's how everything, you know, worked out for you. But I came from the exact opposite, being from Southern Baptist. You know, a woman's got her place, a man's got his place, and it always rang wrong with me. The tone was always wrong with me. So I'm glad I finally found somebody that was just like, you know, let's try this, you know, this realm that hasn't been really explored.
When you say it rang wrong with you, what was it? Like, what was it about those very rigid gender norms that said to you, what is this about? Like, that a woman has to be this way and a man has to be this way.
I enjoyed cooking.
He's a good cook. I'm a terrible cook. I'm a terrible cook.
So strange. Like, I don't know about you, but the last time I checked, we all needed food. Right, so it's just so strange that it's like one has to cook it, and then one was hunting for it or something. So does that mean you purchase it and you cook it?
No, I'll purchase. I'll go to the store. I'll go to the store and gather it, and Micah will put it together in this beautifully spiced. You know, you have an experience when you eat his food. I'll like serve you a baguette with some goat cheese, and that's it, right?
That sounds good though too. That sounds good too.
Yeah, well, I don't make anything.
So. But so it is interesting though, like how you, like that we've come into culturally these different norms. So I remember you saying that in the Danish culture, what is it, like 98% of people from, because you brought up post-Christian.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's 2% of the Danish population are Christians, or
2%.
some sort of religion or belief system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting, though, that you would bring up religion, and then you brought up religion as a path to us defining our gender norms.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's how it has done. So let's peel back one more layer, okay? Power. Relationships are about power.
Okay.
All relationships are about power. When you have equal power, it feels really good. I honor you, you honor me, we do this together.
We go into battle together.
Yes. Ride or die, right? But there is a shared power and is cooperation.
Right.
Whereas when you have a one down position, which is also a power dynamic, it's competition. I now have to advocate for having my resources met, or not resources, but needs met with whatever resources are available to me, right? So whether it's how I get my emotional needs met or my physical needs met, and when there's a one down position, you have to either, if you're up here, you have to maintain the power. If you're down here, you have to push back, right? Or not. But it creates this weird dynamic where, like, the patriarchy is very alive.
Right.
You know, and so I think we can't talk about gender fluidity or roles without also talking about power.
It's a shared power for sure. It's for me personally, it is probably one of the most, like I said, comfortable situations I've ever been in. It allows me the space in my head as well to, figure out all these other things that come along with this gender fluidity. And she's just like, she's my rock sometimes, like she says, that there's always this balance, but sometimes, and it's so nice to know, like I said, I would ride into battle with somebody with this mentality, this nurturing, caring love about themselves. So
there's so much respect in that. Like there's this real, like, to be somebody's rock, if you think about that statement alone, like, warms my heart. And I think about how much respect, because what you're doing is you're actually seeing that person really deeply, right? There's also, you guys know that I'm really passionate about authenticity. And so when you think about authenticity, there are so many, in order for us to be whole, we have to have the freedom to be all parts of us without the expectation that somebody needs us to not be something that we fully want to be. So like you said, like, if you enjoy cooking, but yet you're in a society that says men don't cook, then you're repressing a part of yourself that could make you whole.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so to me, there's also, besides power, there's also this completeness. Ice cream man!
We'll be right back.
Time out. Speaking of wholeness, but I do think there's something that when we talk about this scope and this full range of being ourselves, then it allows for us, whenever we can say, yes, this is an expression, this is something that I want to do, and I don't have to be held back by what society or what you or anybody else says. I'm allowed to just be me, whatever that looks like, and it's not masculine or feminine, it's human.
Exactly.
Yes. Me being allowed to go, I'm a great chef, I'm a great cook, and to cook with love, that trickles down into my son, who all day long, I remember it's a couple of years ago, I had asked him if he wanted a computer or a KitchenAid mixer. He chose the mixer. And from that day forth, he has excelled me when it comes to just cooking. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch him be co-supported by his parents and love what he does. And I bet my life on it. This kid's going to be one of the top chefs out there, because we nurtured him, and I was allowed to go, yeah, you do that, please. I want you to be, whatever you love to do the most, I'm going to back you on it and make sure that happens. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, he's on his way, because I learned something that I was told not to do, and now that's all he does.
Yeah, permission to just follow his
Absolutely,
heart.
absolutely, and he's running with it. He's running with it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So how does this topic of gender fluidity, how does it strengthen or support or impact your relationship? Like as far as the strength of your relationship, right? How does it even the topic in general affect your relationship?
It allows communication to flow without hesitation. If it's negative, if it's positive, it's mostly positive. Thank God. Thank all gods. Excuse my French.
Thor. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank Thor. For me, the whole part of always trying to communicate with somebody and allow them inside my head without fear of retaliation, without fear of what I'm going to reveal to you is my full self. Because I've been in some interesting relationships before, and we all learn from them. Thank God. Or I don't know why I'm saying that, but it's something that I always take to my heart, and I appreciate it so much. So.
But I think mostly it shows up in expectations. So my expectation of Micah is not that he has to fulfill some stereotypical roles or parts. And that's everything, right? So it's like cooking. I mean, lots of men cook, right? But it's like even in the way that we approach our dreams and goals, and it's everything. Who pays for what, who does every task. It's so we have a discussion. So what part are you going to do? What part am I going to? It's not assumed. And the same with what we like and what we love and the activities we want to do. It's just about what are your preferences more than, well, you're a dude, right? So this is what you're going to do. There's none of that.
Yeah. So you, Micah, said that innately early on you recognized that something just didn't resonate, right? From the way that you grew up. And then you hear Pia, given her role, talking about these dynamics in relationships. Do you remember the point that you started to be like, let's talk about this more? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think it was right in the beginning. You know what? I'm going to refer that to you, because you would know that better than me when we started having a conversation. I know it was early on in our relationship when we started having it, because, like I said, we recognized it immediately. It was just like, hey, I recognized her power, and I was just like, there's something different about that, and she owned it, and it wasn't masculine or anything like that, but it was just.
I was opinionated.
No, that's not it. She just held herself in a way that made me go, she's sure of herself. We all have our flaws, and we all try to, come up through life as best we can, but how she was coming through it and how she was working through everything, I knew I wanted to be on a level like that and vibe with somebody like that.
So some people would in a traditional male, gender norms would look at that and be threatened by it or be frustrated by that with somebody who had a strong, I don't know that it's opinionated, but had a strong sense of self, right?
Yeah.
That you know what know what you want, right?
Yeah.
And you have opinions and you get to. So what I'm wondering is, for people out there that are in traditional gender roles right now, and maybe it doesn't resonate. Maybe their families expect them to operate in these types of ways. if there are couples out there or people out there who want to begin to step into what would it look like for me to start to challenge myself with what's expected of me in my relationships, how would you say that somebody would go about beginning to have that inner dialogue? Because you're a therapist, so some of this somewhat kind of comes naturally to you and is part of the territory, right?
Well, so I just want to also add this to the conversation is often have been told I'm too forceful, or it's not that I just run over other people's ideas, but I am, if I mean something is no, like I would just say, no, that doesn't work. Let's talk more about this. And so I think when the shift happened for me is when we started being around each other, and we both, Micah is also a very strong personality, and he was okay with me being that way. And then also he is an artist, so we would decorate a space together, and suddenly we had these traits like business, being really into art and the visual space, what that looks like. And Micah would move things around and I'll go, oh wow, that looks really great. And so suddenly we're doing all these things together, and it seemed like it was this like really balanced, equal.
It felt like a seesaw.
Right.
A fun seesaw.
Right.
Not a difficult one. Just like
You're having fun with it. Nobody's falling off.
nobody's
No,
waiting for you to jump off.
Yes. And so we started doing all these little projects together, and I think that's why I kind of saw it, because it was so well equally balanced and so close compared to this. Well, I love to decorate a space, and it has to be visually pleasing for me to be in it, and so this is how much space there has to be between the furniture, right? And so now suddenly all of those lines started melting away.
Right.
And then that's when I started questioning gender and traits, our traits versus, because typically being, not plenty of male artists, but it's sort of that like creating this visual space is considered more of a feminine trait, wanting to decorate a home, you know? But I mean, why? So I started asking all these whys.
Right. Even when it came to, I learned a lot from everybody, and I learned a lot from my son as well on that aspect of what's comfortable. Let's start there. Let's go basic. What's comfortable on your skin? I remember he came down for a visit, and I gave him a hug, and I was just like, oh my God, he's on the spectrum, so it shows up in different places, but it shows up on his clothes, and I was just like, this feels great. You know, what is this? He was like, cashmere. I was like, oh. And he also does the weighted blanket thing. So a lot of things that comes to, you know, making the whole body comfortable, he taught me. And so I was watching him when it came to just how it came to, you know, presenting, and like I said, just the whole aspect of what he wore taught me a level of, I don't know how to explain this one. I'm gonna get back to this one.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's an important lesson.
So it's sort of like maybe feeling the world with your senses, which is typically
constantly.
Typically more of a traditionally feminine, right? Sensuality.
That's where I was going.
Right.
That's where I was going, because everything he wore was feminine. But to me, I put it on, and I was like, I wish somebody would have got in front of me years ago and showed me this. So he taught me that.
Right.
Thank you. Pia also helps me finish thoughts.
It's fluid.
It's fluid.
Yeah.
It's very fluid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I was saying. Just the aspect of that, and being a chef or in the kitchen, I was just like, no, I'm going to support you on everything, because it's teaching me, and like I said, now I pay attention to what's on my body. I pay attention, even how I go to sleep now. It's a better sleep because of what he taught me. And it was these aspects of feminine. It's not feminine. It's nurturing.
As you're talking, I'm wondering, I sense that in your relationship, but how does this transfer to the rest of the world? Now, Asheville's a little bit of a microcosm.
Yeah, it is.
So maybe
We're
Asheville
special.
might be but I'm still interested here versus in the broader community of Asheville versus in Cuba or in some other community, right? How do you gauge that, and how do you sense that, and how does it feel different or the same?
Do you wanna?
No.
Okay. So I would say, so as a couples counselor, right? Typically in American culture, men can feel 3 feelings: anger, lust, or happiness. And then women can have this full spectrum, right? But it's almost like, so you're very sensitive today. Is it because nobody wants to really say it? Let's be real, right? But are you on your period? And people have now learned that maybe that's not the best thing to say, but it's still implied a little bit, right? And so I think in my, as I work with couples, and I'm teaching men to because a lot of men are dismissive, avoidant, they've learned to suppress feeling. And just
in all cultures.
In all cultures.
Yeah.
And teaching men to learn to feel their feelings and what comes up and identify their feelings. And then for women to, in relationships, step more into an equal power role, whatever that looks like in that relationship.
Right.
And so connect both on all levels, right? Yeah. Whether it's erotic, whether it's sensually, how is that the right word?
Yes.
Or in terms of tasks, or with finances, or whatever they're good at, right? And so kind of embrace all of it. It's in order for both people to become securely attached to each other, and being able to show up in their full human being, as an emotional human being and as a physical human being. And so I think that's why it shows up the most, and people bring up these things all day long. And so,
and I can't think of, most cultures out there are based on the masculine,
right?
But I'm the weirdo going straight to, some of my favorite things on this planet are plants. And so when I look for guidance, sometimes I will look towards nature. And even when it comes to how animals treat each other, I will look towards that, and I go, looks like the lionesses are running that. It looks like when you pan back. So there's a lot of aspects where nature will show you that, it's March. If you've never seen March of the Penguins, it's the woman, it's the female that's working the hardest out of that whole scenario. So I take cues from nature all the time in that aspect. So many people go, that's not in my nature to, do something like that. But I'm like, but if you actually pay attention to nature, it is in you.
I would like to offer, instead of weirdo, that maybe you're a trailblazer.
I'll take trailblazer.
Yeah, I think trailblazer sounds better, because I do think, honestly, that when you come from a space of kindness and extending and recognizing the full expression, and then it's not even human, like what you're describing with nature isn't human, but it's the fullness of whatever it is that we're looking at, right? To me, there's just this trailblazer kind of, it shouldn't be trailblazer, right? But it's interesting. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
To me, it does.
Yeah.
And
good.
Yes.
You speak, Beth.
You guys better speak, Beth, too.
But I also think sometimes in sessions with people, maybe even in an individual session, I hear men say this all the time, I would love to get word of affirmation too about, hey, you're really handsome, or bringing me flowers, or would you like to have a message
or male?
From their female partner.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Or like that men have there's this ideal male behavior, and sometimes men want to be taken care of, not always be the ones that are pouring out, but also be receiving, right?
asterisk. So I do give compliments to men, and it's nothing sexual.
Right.
It's as we look at anything beautiful, we go, oh, that's beautiful, and you tell. I definitely look at guys when we're in the gym sometimes, and I'm going, good job, that's great, you look great, man, you look great. And it's nothing to do with, you know, anything but just encouragement.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have, like, if it was a female, I wouldn't want her to think, you know, I'm just hitting on her because I'm going, good job. But now that I think about it, I've only complimented men in the gym. So I think I'm going to, next time we go out to the gym, I'm going to compliment a female, so you're aware of it. That's a joke.
Yeah, that's interesting though.
So yeah, it shows up everywhere,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
And I think that again, the gender roles stereotypically about because society still is, if you're in traditional jobs, that women might make a little bit less than men for the same job.
Right.
And so I think there's still the financial power differential.
Right.
And so it shows up like, men, I'll deal with it, I'll take care of it. But I think if it could be like a shared, equal, and a equal giving and receiving, and then you would have relationships that feel equal and fair. We're not talking tit for tat.
No.
We're talking shared power.
Right. What I love about this too is a couple of things. I think that it would give a lot of freedom to men and women. Okay, because I think sometimes, like, my instinct, and I could be wrong with this, but I feel like sometimes when we talk about gender fluidity, that it feels like society's comfortable with women having more maybe masculine traits, and I could be wrong, than men having more feminine traits.
I see what you're saying, and you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't think in politics, though. If you're in politics or some, like, I think if you have more of this like strong personality,
because you're in power,
right? Then you consider, oh, you know, she's so masculine,
Yeah.
and that's actually not necessarily a positive. That I don't
Right.
hear that typically referred to as.
so depending on the
Positive.
sectors.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
depending on the
think so, too.
sectors.
Yeah.
But what I heard you saying, Micah, was that it was within you early on, and I think what's important for people to hear is that sometimes when there's something lacking in a relationship, it's no matter what our gender, it's the restrictions that we have to be whole again, fully authentically ourselves, because we're restricted in large part by our society, and then our families and our communities. So if you grow up in Asheville, you might have one set of expectations and what's allowed. But if you grow up, and I'm not going to say any particular states or communities, but you know who you are.
Every other one.
But if you're in other places, it may be wherever you're at, you're really at the mercy of your family, your community, the expectations. And so sometimes until you even get outside of those, I mean, so many times when people go off to college, it's such a culture shock because you're like, oh my gosh, like, what's happening here, right? Because there's people coming from all these different places where all of these expectations are different, and I talk about it a lot on different episodes that I've had about, like, we all have these different lenses and filters based upon so many different factors, and that's kind of where it comes up. But I think what you're bringing up with the gender fluidity is this freedom, regardless of your gender, to, if you can get through the conversations, and especially if it's a safe relationship, because you cannot have this conversation unless there's safety in your relationship to do that, because otherwise there can be such judgment, not just personal judgment, but from, you know, your partner, and then extending beyond to your family. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen couples be fine with the shared governance and shared decision making, but you go to a family function and it's like, what's happening? You know? So we're going to kind of get to a place of wrapping this conversation up.
Can I just add something that I thought about? That I think is very important to having the conversation too. And I think this is actually a disadvantage to men, right? People who identify as males.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many women say, well, I do want a man that's vulnerable, but when he is vulnerable, I don't find him attractive.
Ooh, wow.
And I think that we as a society have to talk about that, because
I have known a person to break up with a gentleman because he cried in front of her.
right. And this is not uncommon for me to hear.
Wow. You
This
mean in
is
your
huge.
sessions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Huge. You know, where kind of like a sidebar conversation. Yeah, I have to be honest. In theory, logically, I would want my man to be able to open up and be vulnerable and share his fears and get in touch with his feelings. But I have, and they see it as conditioning, I have been conditioned to, when a man shows vulnerability or a softness, his soft underbelly, instead of the tough Marlboro man, you know, from the commercials, then I feel unattracted. And so that's a whole
Well, I
different...
think it's important to talk about, though, because not just is a larger, I mean, here, I think it's important to talk about just a second, because number one, my first inclination would be that this is a biological, like we have an evolutionary, you know, in our evolution, it takes a while for beyond our thinking for our neurobiology to catch up. So if we were hunters gatherers, you know, and we were in these traditions, like it actually, as a woman, if it's considered only a weakness because in your group it could put you at risk, right? And so to me, sometimes it's no different than any other part of us where we get scared. Sometimes we have to say, oh, am I really scared? Or is it just like it's a trigger that is not necessarily true. It's just something that biologically was true, and my mind hasn't caught up to, that's not relevant anymore. I mean, we call it in our field paper tigers, right? Where people get triggered, and there's no real tiger or real threat, but we have this reaction as if there's a threat when it's not true. So we ask ourselves, is this true anymore? It almost feels like what you're describing is that same type of phenomenon, where somebody has a disconnected to actual source. This isn't relevant anymore. We as a species don't have to, like, you know, it's okay if you cry. It's not gonna, nobody's at risk. There's nobody coming into the village, or anybody's not coming in here, and nobody's gonna be at harm if Micah cries, right? And I mean, actually, to me, personally, I've gotten to the point where I feel like it's alluring. It's attractive.
Right.
When somebody actually, when somebody is vulnerable, it's attractive because what it tells me is you're capable of not being on autopilot. You're not just going based upon what is being triggered for you. You're actually conscious. You're intentional. You have a connection between what's happening around you and within you, and you're cognizant of that. So to me, that is very attractive, because what it means is somebody's done some work.
Right. So that brought up actually a question for me that I might have to think through, and now I'm just going to do it right here.
Okay,
in
great.
front of
Out
everybody.
loud. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, can you still be powerful and cry? Can you still be in a situation where...
May I stop you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So even biologically, or did we teach our male children to shove it down, right?
Yes.
Because let's go thousands of years back, and there's a storm, it kills people in the village. Can you still cry while you're picking up big rocks and moving them out of the way?
Yeah.
Or did we teach boys not to cry?
Right.
Right? And so that becomes, again, the hundreds of year question, right? Nurturing versus nature. What is our innate nature? Because I think, and this is a whole different topic in another podcast, right? But stuffing down our feelings and not processing them cause illness.
Yes, I was just gonna say we have to say that,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if you're out there, this isn't a hypothesis. At this point, this is fact. Okay. So if you have the old time saying of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stuff this stuff down, if you have disease, if you have some chronic illness, if you have something that you want to say, and it's just taking everything you have not to say it, or you can feel it bubbling up within you, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say there's probably some sort of condition that you're dealing with and you haven't linked it to you suppressing this emotion. Emotions are energy in motion in your body, and it creates disease. We know this. So if for no other reason than you want to be around, you want to be here for your family, like at this juncture in our humanity, we need you in the family. And that's more important. We don't need you to be available to stop intruders, okay? We got ADP for that, right? Is that what it's called? ADP?
APD.
APD? Whatever. We've got some sort of systems for that, right?
You got it.
But what we need is your presence,
Absolutely.
right? And so at this juncture in our humanity, stuffing it down is actually doing more harm.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree.
Yeah.
There is no tiger.
There is no tiger. Yeah. Okay, so I've got all my questions answered. Is there anything else though on this topic? And I think especially around, to me, I'd like to kind of wrap up with somebody who was wanting to, somebody that's leaning into this and going, wow, what's my first step? What's my first step? Because my first thought, I'd like to hear what each of you, what we all have to say, but my first thought is creating safety where you do it. Making sure that you're on a shared, like you guys came to this because you both said it matters to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So where do you feel like you start with?
Well,
being able to-
I definitely felt like the way we could just talk about everything, right? Our shadow side or our vulnerability, our fears, and then also all the good stuff in life. And I remember one day I just looked at Micah and I said, I don't know that I feel feminine or masculine. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. And what did you say?
I feel the same way. I feel the same way. And we both went,
Wow, what does this mean? And so I think, who are you constant? Who are the people in your life who don't judge you?
Yes.
Who you can sit down and have the real conversation? It might just be one person.
Right.
And then you start there, right? And
Yeah.
then, and then then I think going into yourself and figuring out, if I didn't have, I mean, it's hard to
Beautiful.
sort through, but if I was just gonna do the things that I feel compelled to do, what would that be? And then you can even look at them and go, oh, this is considered by our culture masculine, or this is considered feminine, and then contemplate or meditate on that for yourself, and then find people that are open to have these kind of conversations without judgment.
Yeah.
Super important.
And something we were talking about before we came on here is oftentimes people seek professional help when it's too late.
Yes.
And so remember that resources that are out there, such as counseling, can actually, you want to go to those when you're doing well, when you're actually in a space where you want to strengthen your relationship and you haven't already given up on it.
correct.
So this is also kind of a topic or something that if there is a part of you that you want to expand, this is actually the perfect kind of thing that you could talk about. And it would actually just, even the exercise, I would imagine, of having these discussions strengthens your relationship because
Absolutely.
it helps you communicate better,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can't touch our communication. It's
Yeah,
top notch.
it's beautiful.
Appreciate you.
I do too.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Beth.
And thanks for the conversation. I really think that this is going to open up people's minds and have them be thinking about things that they haven't necessarily thought about before. So thank you for that. And at the end of my episode, I always say thank you to Micah Mackenzie for the incredible cover art for Click Moments. And Micah's actually here today. So I'm going to say thank you, Micah, for the portal pick. I
You're welcome.
absolutely love it.
Well, I love you, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. I love you too. And I love you, Pia.
Yeah, I love you too. It's great to be here.
All right, so until next time, friends, peace, love, and joy.